why does it feel like it's Groundhog Day? I wake up and, it's kind of like, okay, I woke up again and then I have to brush my teeth again and then I have my coffee again. Then you say hello to the same people. This is an exercise of free thought, okay? Free thought. And realizing that across the world, people have asked these same questions for millennia. As long as humans have existed, we've asked questions about our predicament. Why is life this way? Why? Okay, peace, family. My name is Christina Victoria, and today I have another bunch of questions that I wanted to ask you all on this train of thought regarding, is this hell? Is this a hell realm? What accounts for the level of dysfunction, suffering, filth, things like that in this degrading type of environment that we're in that's called Earth? And so 2 days ago, I was brave enough to ask that question. Yesterday, coming from a Christian perspective, I went into the Bible and was asking, if this is hell, if this is some level of a hell realm, then what should we do? What do we do about it? And kind of exploring God's love for us and what is our response in terms of, if this is hell, then how do we get out of this situation? And so today I wanted to ask that same question. If this is a hell realm, how do we get out of the situation? But coming from an Eastern perspective. And so really going into the idea of samsara, which is the endless cycle of death and rebirth, karma, which is what determines where we're going to be born and what our circumstances are, and moksha, or liberation, which is escape from this wheel, okay? Escape from this wheel, total freedom, total bliss and peace. It's also called nirvana, things like that. And so before we get into this, as always, I love you guys, wishing you abundant life, love, joy, peace, and prosperity, family. But not only to you, to your loved ones, to your communities, and even to your stinky butt enemies. And with that, let's get into the video. So I am like already sweating. It is like morning time, okay, for real. It is morning time in Atlanta and it's hot, y'all. So as I like keep wiping my face, I'm sweating. I'm facing the sun, but I mean, they call it hot Atlanta for a reason, and it is indeed hot. So so I really wanted to explore this idea of karma, the law of cause and effect. And I have some text that I'm going to get into in just a minute, but I wanted to talk for a minute. Again, I want y'all to know that this is an exercise of free thought, okay? Free thought. A thought exercise, a philosophical exploration. And so I'm not coming at this as like, this is what it is. Y'all have to believe what I believe. This is not at all where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place of like, is this true? And if this is true, then is that true? And how do we understand these things? And realizing that across the world, people have asked these same questions for millennia. As long as humans have existed, we've asked questions about our predicament. Why is life this way? Why does it feel like it's Groundhog Day? I wake up and, it's kind of like, okay, I woke up again and then I have to brush my teeth again and then I have my coffee again. Then you say hello to the same people. And it feels very Groundhog Day-ish. And it's like, there are some changes. You can make some big changes in your life, for sure, most definitely. I have definitely exercised my free will. But there is an element of like, we're okay, we're just going to keep doing this. And then everyone has to kind of like smile. You ask people like, how are you doing? And it's like, oh, I'm great, I'm well, I'm blessed, And it's like, deep down, if you really know them, they might have been in a car accident right before. But it's like, we're supposed to, for whatever reason, fake the funk, put this mask on that says, oh, I'm great, I'm perfect. No, I don't have any problem. No, we good. You know what I'm saying? When deep down, we all have insecurities and pain and suffering. And, even I don't know these people, right? But the king and queen of England who live in like luxury and they have all the money and they have all the people doting on them, still get cancer and still suffer, like even people who like Oprah, who has billions of dollars, she talks about her own suffering and her own issues with weight and things like that. And so it's like money doesn't seem to get rid of the suffering, being a king doesn't seem to get rid of the suffering. So what is it? What is it? And in the Eastern traditions, they talk about karma, meaning that, you know, depending on what you did in your previous life or lifetimes, you know, in theory, we could have had hundreds or thousands of lives already before now. And that your circumstances in this life are determined by what you did in previous lives. So if you, let's say, were killing people in a previous life, then you might suffer that same kind of death, you know? You might be suffering killed. You know, if you were, you know, stealing from people, you might be stolen from. And so they would say, you know, if something bad happens, if people steal from your home, then it has to be because in a previous life you had stolen from somebody. And so it's only fair that that would happen to you. And that there's an endless cycle of this karmic cycle, right? As long as you are alive. And this is not just humans. This is talking about the lower realms. And we're going to get into all these different realms of existence. The potential realms. Again, I'm not saying this is what it is, but it's just a thought exercise to kind of explore, what if this is true? What if there's any level of truth to this? That, you know, your karma will not only determine what level of existence you're in, you know, what your circumstances are in, you know, as a human, but even as an animal. So if you think about, you know, the life of a dog, right? They're so cute and we cuddle on them and like, oh my God, they're so cute. But they, you know, you think about what is the suffering of a dog? The dog, you know, they don't have that level of autonomy that we have. You know, an antelope, you know, the constant fear of being eaten by a lion, you know what I mean? And then if you think about the lion who has to hunt and is hungry and has to hunt, you know, and like kill a live animal just to survive, you know, and you think about, you know, I get that the lion has to do that, but do you ever think about, you know, I wonder how the lion feels about that? Like, do they ever have a moment or a glimmer of consciousness that says, you know, this sucks for the antelope? Like, I wonder that. Do y'all wonder that? And so I'm like sweating so much. So I'm not gonna play like I'm an expert in Eastern traditions. I've read a bunch of things, but I wanted to go into Hinduism, Buddhism, and Sikhism that all have a similar philosophy. They all have differences, and Jainism. They all have a similar philosophy in terms of the idea of Samsara, which is the endless cycle of death and rebirth, which some have said that Earth is the place of Samsara. You know, you can interpret Samsara as a level of hell in terms of, you know, it definitely has a hell realm and then heaven realms. But if you think about the idea that, you know, if you're in hell for eternity, it's forever, right? And on some level, there's this idea that we're kind of in this forever, like you can't really escape from it. If you do escape from it, well, you can escape from it. When you do escape from it, it's called moksha or liberation or nirvana. And that is the ascension to total bliss and peace, where you're no longer stuck in this rat race, this cycle. And that, you know, even, for example, the King of England or the Queen of England, despite the fact that they have servants and like all of this, right, that they too are in a hell realm, or that they too are in a state of this cycle. You know, Oprah, as much money as she has, is still stuck in this cycle with everybody else. And so I wanted to first talk about the different levels of this. And this is coming out of Buddhism, but, you know, each philosophy has a slightly different, and I'm not going to have time to go into all of them, but I just wanted to kind of do an overview to see what y'all think. And again, y'all are welcome to comment about this, because it's just so amazingly fascinating to me. So, so let's just start with the different levels of samsara, okay? And I am in this paper by Mingyur Rinpoche, and this is based in Tibetan Buddhism, okay? I'm sweating, okay. Tibetan Buddhism, and this document, I can link it if y'all want to read it. It calls the 6 realms of samsaric existence, okay? And what it says is that there are 6 realms. There are 3 lower realms and 3 higher realms. And that regardless of where you are still in samsara. So even if you're in the God realm, you're still stuck in samsara. Even if you're in the actual hell realm, you're still stuck in samsara. And that regardless of where you are, the actual goal is to get out of samsara, is to be totally liberated from the whole thing altogether. And so the lowest realm would be the hell realm. Right above that, which is just total torture. We're going to go into more of it. Total torture, constant torture. So it's like, if you think about, you know, you stub your toe and it hurts, think of it hurting like that 24 hours, 7 days a week, all the time, suffering. that it's impossible to achieve any level of liberation because you're just stuck suffering. It's just the suffering is just continual. It just never ends, right? It's so overwhelming that you don't even have time to think, okay? Then above that would be the hungry ghosts. Wait, then above that would be, yeah, the hungry ghosts. Hungry ghosts have this long neck. They're constantly hungry, but they have a long, tiny neck. All they can take is like one sip of water at a time. And so they're constantly hungry. And they say it relates to greed, right? And so that humans, even though we're humans, right? We think that we're in the human realm, but like we experience all of these different levels, and that they may be more allegorical, which means that they may represent states of existence, states of mental existence, that it doesn't mean that, as a human, I'm not a hungry ghost. It means that as a human, you can pass through these states of mental existence in interesting ways. Okay, so you have the hungry ghost, which is the greed, right? If you think about the consumer culture, constantly needing and never being full, never having enough, right? Never ever, you're always trying to buy the newest thing, the newest iPhone, right? I just had an iPhone, I need a new one. I just got this new car, I need a new one. I need 5 cars. I need 1 car for this, I need 1 car for that, I need 1 car for this, and I need 1 car for that. Obviously, right? It's the constant seeking. It also could be like addiction, right? This like, you're smoking, and then you just smoked one, and you're like, I need to roll up again, right? This constant, like, never full. Okay, then you have the animal realm. Okay, the animal realm, which is, as we know, like animals, right? And they're so cute, right? But think about how limited they are. They're like robots. Like a dog can only dog, an antelope can only antelope. It can't do really anything else besides that. And they don't have any autonomy. Like, if you ever see a animal, like a cat or a dog, and they'll fart, like they'll pass gas, and then they'll look as though like they don't really know where it came from. You know what I mean? It's like that's the level of an animal, right? Where it's like a level of inability to really self-reflect. They're like on autopilot. They're instinct driven. So you're driven by instincts. I want to have sex. I want to eat. I want to, kill that person, whatever it is. And there's no sense of self-reflection, like, should I do this? Or maybe I should pause. You can, obviously get dogs to, have some level of behavioral obedience. But then we can ask ourselves, I know that they're being obedient for whatever reason to us because of the dominance hierarchy, but does the dog actually have self-reflection to understand why they shouldn't, do certain things? Okay. So then you have the human realm, which is on the higher, on the higher, beginning to be in the higher realms of existence. And having a human birth is said in this kind of philosophy to be the most auspicious, beneficial birth you can have, okay? So it's saying that humans actually are at an advantage because you have the perfect combination of suffering and joy that makes it so that you want to be free, but the suffering is enough that it compels you to make changes and to improve and to seek this freedom. And so you're suffering a little bit, but not too much. You're happy, but not all the time. And that gives us the perfect combination to seek liberation. Okay, so then you have, above that, you have the divas, the demigods, and then the gods, okay? And in these realms, the problem that comes in is not that they're suffering as much, right? There's less suffering in these realms, less physical suffering, right? So if you think about the King of England, for example, could be an example of this higher realm of consciousness or higher realm of existence, where it's like, let me just read for you guys instead of talking just off of what I read, because I think this is so fascinating that, okay. So we have, okay, the realm of the demigods, okay? This is one realm. Okay, so let me just go back to the humans. Okay, so it says, suffering so thoroughly oppresses beings in the lower realms that the possibility of liberation cannot arise. Our suffering does not overwhelm our longing for freedom, and our fleeting moments of happiness confirm that suffering is not fixed. Suffering too is impermanent and changeable. Suffering and happiness together create the perfect conditions for awakening. Isn't this wonderful? Okay. So then when we go higher, we have the realms of the demigods. And it says the demigods and the gods, their issue is jealousy and pride. And so it's not that physical. It's interesting, right? When you think about even on earth, you can judge people based on their outward, right? So you're like, well, I'm not suffering like that person's suffering because I have money. I'm not suffering like that person's suffering because I'm not on drugs, right? But the suffering or the dysfunction is much more subtle, and it's much more of the mind and of the heart, right? So a person can be living in, so it says like, the seductions of luxury and leisure overwhelm the aspiration to wake up, okay? The seductions of luxury and leisure overwhelm the aspiration to wake up. So these people remain asleep because they're too comfortable, they're too complacent, right? It says they wrap themselves in material objects, creating a facade of false security and satisfaction. All the while, they are setting themselves up to be devastated by life's inevitable fluctuations. And they remain unprepared for changing financial or social status, losing loved ones, growing old, failing health, and dying. It says meditators, people who are seeking liberation, but they indulge in this realm of the demigods of the highest, and I can't say it's the highest, of the more luxurious, I guess you could say, may spend more time arranging their beautiful images on their shrines, right? Dressing themselves up in beautiful things, doing the outward appearance. And even Christianity talks about the outward appearance of godliness, but they don't really have it inside, right? That they would spend more time arranging the beautiful images on the shrine than working on their minds. And the seduction of comfort may be so strong that they practice while lying down on the couch. But sitting up and putting some backbone into your efforts actually helps the mind to let go of its habitual traps, whether they are sensory indulgences, blind anger, or greed. And then it talks about the God realm, that eventually that beings will use things like meditation as a way to pursue bliss or seeking pleasure. So it ends up being not actually a way to liberate, but it's like a pleasure-seeking behavior, okay? And that eventually these misguided strategies for happiness return these beings to lower states of suffering, okay? So like, think about how wild this is, that in this idea of samsara, that when you're in the lower states, you're suffering so much that you can't even think about ascending, okay? When you're in the higher states, you're so relaxed and blissed out that you're still asleep though. You're still asleep to your condition. And that when suffering does arise, you're so ill-equipped to deal with it because all you've been doing is just dressing yourself up in pretty clothes, that when something does happen, like you lose a loved one, it's a catastrophe. And then these are the people that end up in things like addiction. And if you see even like celebrities who have like all the money in the world and all the fame in the world, like I would think of like a Whitney Houston type of person who I would think of as like the diva, right? The divas, who has everything you could possibly want, you would think, and yet obviously was suffering so much that she ended up in addiction and then died that way. And so it's like you're constantly moving back and forth. So they're saying that these are not actually like physical places. It's not like you have one place that's the hell realm and one place that's the diva realm. That in theory, that humans can inhabit all of these different states at different times, and that we're constantly moving back and forth between them in this lifetime and then between lifetimes, depending on our karma. And so you might, in theory, go from a hungry ghost realm into a diva realm, or you might go from a diva realm into an animal realm of total ignorance. You know what I mean? And that the idea is not, like a lot of us, I think, have this idea of, well, in order to eliminate my suffering, I have to get more fame, or I have to get more money, or whatever it is. When that's not really the solution, because once you have those things, I've seen, if you watch Jim Carrey, he's like, he became famous and has all the money, and he's like, that's, I promise you, not it. It's like, that's not it. That's not what's going to give you happiness, because you see a lot of these people end up killing themselves. I think it's because they have achieved all the things that they were told they were supposed to have. Everything, right? Anthony Bourdain, there's tons of them, right? Who his life to me would be like the ideal, where you get to travel the world and make videos all day and eat good food, you think that would be like that would be like a heaven, right? At least in my mind. Maybe we have different interpretations of what heaven would be, but the idea that someone like that would be suffering so much that he would kill himself, why? Why? It's because despite all of that, he still had some suffering that we couldn't see. It's that subtle suffering, subtle suffering that's in the heart and in the mind. That I think that honestly, it almost feels like those people suffer the most. Like when you see like they call them third world countries, countries where there's a lot of poverty, hunger, things like that. And you see Westerners go to these countries and places, and you're like, and they're always remarking, like, how is it that these children are like so happy? Why are these kids so happy? They're sitting here playing with, they have like sticks, and they're making, using trash and wires, metal, weird stuff that they find to make toys. And they're like happy and singing and like clapping, and like there's a joyfulness that you see sometimes with these people, right? Y'all understand what I'm talking about. And it almost feels like sometimes in whatever these higher realms, I call them higher realms, but sometimes it seems like the suffering seems to be so much more sinister because there's an insistence that people are supposed to paint their faces and smile despite the fact that they're suffering, and that we're supposed to hide the suffering to play like we're not suffering. But it's still there. It's still in there deep, right? And I think this is why there's so much mental illness and so much depression. And a lot of people, like, they might not be on like, street drugs, but there's a lot of people in these higher realms, right, who are on like prescription drugs. They're addicted to stuff. Why is that? Is it just a physical addiction, or is it like a hunger for something that we're not being satisfied? And it's not being satisfied with your mouth, right? It's not being satisfied in your belly. It's being satisfied, I think, in a heart place. Like there's this deep heart place. I think all of us collectively are seeking something. And I think I'm part of that, right? I'm also seeking something, which is why I'm even contemplating these things and making these videos, right? Like, why is it that we suffer? Why is it that there's subtle discomfort, dis-ease, a subtle sadness, I think, that, like, I love my mother to pieces, right? I cry if I think about it. Like, that love that I have for her is like tied to this intense feeling of fear. Like, whoa, if something happened to her, like, yo, it's hard to even think about, right? And that's so deep, that dichotomy of this earth. You can't escape it. You can't escape it. The more you love something, the more you're going to miss it when you lose it. That's so hard. That's so hard. That's so hard. And like, God, it's like, why is it like this? I'm not saying that I have the answer for any of this, but I'm trying to understand it, And I want to be liberated. I want to be totally free, not just free in my mind. I want to be free in my body, and I want to be free from this idea of suffering, and I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if that's possible, like as a lifelong Christian, Christianity doesn't account for that feeling of loss and sadness, right? Like, I think of so many people who've had lost children, that intense love, right? And then if you lose the child, I mean, my God, right? My God. Christianity, there's no words for it. You know what I mean? There's no, like, we can talk about the love of God, the love of Jesus. He comes to redeem our sins and all this, but that feeling of like, yo, I don't know if any of it really takes away that pain. You learn to live with pain. You learn to live with discomfort and those hard things. And you have to just kind of put one foot in front of the other and just keep going and smile, and then you have to go to work and like stuff. And then you have to be like, oh, how you doing? And you're like, blessed, highly favored, when the person just had a miscarriage, but you're not supposed to talk about that at work. You're supposed to be professional at work, I mean, it's like, yo, and so I wanted to talk now just, I guess, about, while I have a few more minutes, about liberation, like moksha, right? What is moksha? Moksha, nirvana, samadhi are just words in the Eastern traditions for this liberation, this escape from the suffering, right? That in Revelation it talks about there's a time of a new heaven, new earth, where there's suffering no more, there's pain no more, there's fear no more, and I think all of us have an idea or are willing for that, right? And the idea of moksha or liberation is simply that. It's oneness with God, oneness with everything, oneness with universe. Interestingly, Eastern traditions don't even agree completely on this. If you look at Buddhism, they don't believe that God exists, that there is no real like God. Like you think, God is a conscious being. In Buddhism, they don't think about that. But then if you look at Sikhism, it believes in a one God, a one true God, right? And then if you look at Hinduism, there are many gods. And if you look at Jainism, it's like there's no understanding. There's no understanding. We can put our foot in the ground, and say, I know this is 100%. I'm gonna believe in the Bible 100%, or I'm gonna believe in Jainism 100%, or I'm gonna believe in Sikhism 100%. But like, there are so many different philosophies. It's like, how are we supposed to even know 100% which one is true? Which one is true? At the end of the day, I will always confess Christ, and I'll confess that there's one God, because that's what I know the most. But like, how do we know 100% that that's true? It's a little maddening almost to not be able to 100% know for certain that this is what it is. You can believe 100% that this is what it is, but you don't know 100% that this is what it is. And so it talks about that there are different like aims of human life, okay? Different aims. So if you think about like, there are some people whose aim is just to be a householder. And I'm not saying just, I mean, like, there's some people whose aim is to, get married, have children, and they feel like that's their whole purpose in life, is to just do that, have babies, take care of my husband, and that's my whole purpose in life, right? And that's okay, so there's multiple levels of that. Other people, their whole purpose in life is just to make money, right? They're like, my whole purpose in life is just to make money. I'm just here, I'm trying to get that bag, right? Get the bag. Other people, they're focused more on like I feel like my purpose in life really is a spiritual one. It's like to understand it's a spiritual aim. I feel like I became some level of a renunciant about 7 years ago, because I really, I can't say I gave up on life, but I kind of wanted to remove myself from the rat race in a certain way, where I was like, something about this world is really fake, and like really, really fake. And most people, it seems like, want to go along with that fake stuff. And I did that for a long time. And there was a moment when I sold my place, I sold most of my belongings, and kind of started on my spiritual journey. That was about 7 years ago, because I was like, I see what y'all are doing. I don't really want to participate in this anymore. Like, I don't care about having 1 million followers. Like, I'm not trying to, I don't know. Like, I used to be really in that thing, and kind of stopped caring, because I was like, I want to start pursuing these spiritual things, And so it says that, let me see. It says that there are multiple purposes of human life. So dharma, which is the goal to achieve a virtuous and moral life, I would say that would be like the religious people, I guess. Artha, which is income security, means of livelihood, so trying to make that money, trying to get the bag. Kama, which is emotional fulfillment, pleasure. So the pleasure seeking, people who are just out here just trying to like, pleasure seeking behavior, I guess you would call it. Sensuality. And then moksha, the idea of, I want to get out of this altogether. I want to get out of this altogether. How do I get out of this? that they say is the highest aim of human life. And I would say probably the most difficult, because it's like the people who love this life, who love it, who love the rat race, who love chasing the bag, and love the competition, and love all of this one-upping and all that. They don't understand people like me who are like, yeah, I see how you could do that, but like, I'm kind of over it. You know what I mean? They don't seem to understand. And so I'm on, So what it's saying is that in a state of moksha, you would achieve oneness with Brahman or the Supreme Self or God. Now, again, in Buddhism, they don't believe in God, or they don't believe that there's a God that you would pray to. It's more of like a universal consciousness that you would become one with, and that once you achieve moksha, you would be free from suffering and sorrow and perfection. So that, like right now in Earth, it doesn't matter how high up of a realm you're in or how low of a realm you're in, you're never going to achieve total perfection, right? There's always going to be a level of imperfection built in. But once you achieve moksha, you're totally outside of that imperfection. And that you have to pass through all these different states of Dharma, Artha, and Kama, which is all those three different states of like trying to live a virtuous life, trying to have income security, trying to achieve pleasure. It's like in life, we have to kind of explore all these different things before we can be ready to get out of it, you know? And so they would say that like part of the reason that you have all these over and over rebirths, right? Over and over and over again, is because the soul itself wants to experience all these things. Like at some point you want to have babies. At some point you want to make a bunch of money. At some point you want to go and live a debaucherous life and just party all day forever, you know? At some point you want to have all these experiences. And so we have to live over and over and over again to satisfy all these desires and experiences that we want to have. And that at some point you kind of get tired of it and you're like, all right, I'm done now. I want to get out of this. And so perhaps, you know, again, I'm not saying I know this. If y'all have comments, comment. But perhaps, you know when you ever hear about people talk about like old souls, right? This kid is an old soul. Like you see a little kid and they seem to just have wisdom that's like beyond their years. Like you're like, that kid's been here before. Or you see a kid who's like a master at like piano, right? And like you'll play a tune and then they'll like, that you've practiced for years to do. And then they can just from hearing it, they'll just do it. And you're like, how did they do that? Maybe they were here before, you know? So maybe it's like, maybe the people who want to achieve moksha, like liberation, maybe they're just older. Like maybe it's like after, 1,000 lifetimes, you're over it, you know? And that's the reason why the reason why we have different philosophies, maybe. Again, I'm just free thought. I love free will. I actually love free will. I love the fact that I can think freely and like it is what it is, you know? You don't have to agree with me. But the idea that perhaps, the reason why we have all these different philosophies is that at this level, like at birth 5, right? At birth 5, you're still in the pleasure-seeking behavior, right? You're still, wanting this. And at birth 100, this is kind of around where you are. And then at birth 1,000, you've done it all and you are over it. And you're like, all right, get me out of here, you know? And perhaps, how wild is this when you think about the God-like idea or the demigod idea? That perhaps that once you've achieved moksha, right? Perhaps that once you've achieved moksha and you've gotten out of it, you've gotten out of the rat race, you're in total bliss and peace, and you're just kind of on a cloud, I guess. There's no imperfections, there's no issues, that maybe you'll miss Earth. Maybe we'll get out of this and then look at Earth and be like, actually, that was kind of fun. I want to do it again, And maybe we're here because we want to be. Maybe we're here because, I wanted to have a physical experience on Earth. And that, you just have to accept some of the pain with the pleasure because that's just what it takes to have a human experience, to be able to build, if you're like in a moksha state and you don't have a body, so you can't do all the things we can do. So maybe you have to sacrifice, that heavenly experience in order to come back to Earth to do it again. I don't know. I really don't know. But I wanted to really just talk about today the Eastern perspectives of the idea of this endless cycle and how do we liberate ourselves from that? It's so different in some ways from the Western, from the Judeo-Christian perspective, and that Judeo-Christian perspective would more say that, God will liberate you out, right? That you can't do it. You can't do it. And so that's why God is here to help you get out. And actually in Hindu tradition, there is some evidence of that. There's a Hindu, and there's so much I could say, but there's a Hindu trinity. So, in Christianity, you have the God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And it's said to be one God, though. One God, 3 persons, okay? But in Hinduism, it's a Hindu trinity as well. And then you have Brahman, who's like the big God, big G, I guess, creator. You would have Vishnu, who incarnates into Earth. So when you think about, there's like an actual a savior type of being in Hinduism, and that's called Krishna. And it's like Vishnu that reincarnates, and it's over and over again. It says that this happens over and over and over, endless, like, I don't know if it's endless times, I don't know all the details on it, but it has said that the Vishnu comes and reincarnates on earth for that liberation purpose. And then there's Shiva, who's the destroyer. And it's just fascinating. I'm not saying that I have the answer. At the end of the day, I continue to confess Christ, because I'm like, well, I guess I know this, so I'm gonna keep believing that. But it's just fascinating seeing that there really are parallels across the world. And there's parallels, and then there's parts that are disparate. And I just find it interesting to explore. And if you all have any comments about it, I would love to know what your thoughts are about this. I'm going to continue to make these videos just as a free thought exercise for myself, and to just get some of these thoughts that I'm thinking out. That's really it, to get some of these thoughts out. And that's really it. And I'm not trying to convince y'all of anything, make y'all believe what I believe, because I'm not saying that I believe that all these things are true, but I think it's interesting to explore how people have pursued these things throughout the world. And so the next series of videos I'm going to do is comparing these things. And so what I wanted to really talk about is the left-hand path versus the right-hand path versus the middle path, and what those differences are. And just as a highlight, the right-hand path in Christianity, you would talk about being at the right hand of God, the righteous people, right? The left hand of God would be kind of the opposite, right? The people who are, I guess, the opposite. We're going to just say that. But it's not necessarily bad. If you're a Christian, you might think it's bad, but it might not necessarily be bad. We're going to explore what that side is. And then the middle path, which would be like the Buddhist kind of perspective on things. And so I'm going to leave it there. And I'm just going to keep making these videos and just see where it goes, and see if anyone has any interesting thoughts about it, and just to find other people who are interested in free thought. I think that the spirit of control is very real in this world. And it's like a lot of people want so badly for, it's like, you have to believe what I believe and you have to do what I do. And it's like, yeah, I don't think we're ever going to believe 100% agree with anybody. We're not going to 100% disagree with everybody, but we're not going to 100% agree with anybody. So I'm not trying to make y'all agree with me. I'm just exercising my free will and my free thought. And I think that's something that's fun to do. And I want to find other people who also like to think in interesting ways. And that's it. And so, as always, I love you guys. Wishing you all life, love, joy, peace, and prosperity. And that I will see you all next one.